Reads, Cleveland Water's automated meter reading project, is coming to your neighborhood soon. This project will allow us to obtain meter reading without coming to your home or business. It will also improve service while being cost-effective. Other Clear Reads benefits are reduces estimated reads, increases accuracy, enhances customer service, provides leak detection, plus much more. For more information, visit www.clevelandwater.com/clearreads.
Welcome to another edition of Neighborhood News on TV 20. I'm your host, Jack Marschall, and today we have a very special guest who's joining us, Yvonne Pointer, who is not a stranger to the community by any means, because she has for the better part of the past 3 decades been a community activist and been very involved in community news. She is here today because as we speak, a man by the name of Hernandez Warren, a 58-year-old man, has been arrested and charged in the rape and murder of Yvonne's daughter, Gloria, which happened in 1984, nearly 30 years ago. Yvonne, thank you for joining us today.
Oh, thank you so much, Jack. And of course, you know I love you, and TV 20 is home. Thank you for inviting me.
I appreciate that. Right off the bat, I know you have never given up. People who know Yvonne Pointer know you have never given up in the quest to find Gloria's killer. Today, we think we know who it is. The gentleman has a lot of evidence against him. What are you thinking? What went through your mind when you first heard the news?
Well, initially, I was in shock, quite naturally, because it came out of nowhere. You know, it's not like we were investigating this person in my mind, and this was some kind of lead. I actually thought that the meeting that I was going to was related to Amanda, Georgina, and Michelle Knight, because I was so concerned about them, had reached out to DC Tamba and asked if I could be of any service, and I would love to help the families, help those young ladies, and particularly Michelle. So when I got the call to come to the meeting at City Hall, I was elated. I'm driving like, oh my God, I'm gonna get to talk to her, you know, get to be there for her. And when I walked in the room and I saw DC Tamba and the detectives on Gloria's case, I was confused. I was like, where's Michelle at? You know, still nowhere in my mind was I thinking this was pertaining to me. When they advised me to just sit down, they said, this is not about Michelle, this is about you. Well, okay, you know, so it was really a surprise.
The journey you've been on for the past 30 years is one that is admirable, to say the very least. That would be an understatement. Why didn't you give up? What was inside of you that said, I've got to fight to find Gloria's killer? You
know what, I don't want to come across as some type of super duper person, because in all honesty, there were days that I wanted to give up.
Sure.
There were days that I tried to give up. But it's that God thing, you know, if people have it, they understand what it is, that if you have been called for such a time as this, that there's no stopping you, even when you want to derail yourself. It's almost like when you say, okay, God, use my life, you better be careful what you say, because he just might do it.
Well, you have gone on after Gloria's death. You did proceed, you did move ahead in becoming very much of a community activist, being involved in the community, outside the community. But you've talked about forgiveness and love when it comes to the person responsible for taking your daughter's life. How can you explain that to me?
No, I think there's no explanation. I just think that out of the mouth, the heart speaks, and what's inside of me comes out, you know. And often, to my own surprise, I just know that for me personally, Jack, in order to get up every day, to move forward, to live, I need to have love flowing through me. And things that are like stoppers of that is unforgiveness, hatred. You know, a lot of people wonder why they can't prosper and do any better or in bad health. And I think sometimes it's because they might be harboring some type of unforgiveness. Now, clearly, this individual is a candidate for hatred or animosity. But in the long run, it wouldn't benefit me to feel that way. And it's not going to do anything to him either.
Right.
So then you find that these are emotions you don't need to harbor.
Should there be a conviction in this case? Would you like to meet the suspect?
I would like to meet him and have a one-on-one conversation, very much so, yes.
What would you say to him?
Well, you know, it's one of those things you think you know until you get there. I've heard numerous occasions of families of victims and families of perpetrators coming together for conversation. One of my friends did a movie called Heaven's Rain, and it was just that thing. His mom and dad and sister, his mom and dad were murdered, his sister was raped, and he literally went into the prison and extended forgiveness to the individual. There was another friend of mine, her name is Mary, her son was murdered, and the killer name was O'Shea. And she ended up meeting him in prison, and now they are nationally touring, talking about the power of forgiveness. As a matter of fact, when O'Shea was released from prison, he literally moved, if not next door, but in the same neighborhood, and he takes out Mary's trash. She said to him, I don't have my son, so you can be that role. And they have a wonderful relationship.
You became an ordained minister,
Yep.
maybe working from most recent and working our way backwards. How did that come about? You obviously were very close to the religious community, to your church,
Right.
but that's a pretty big step to become an ordained minister.
Well, I got to tell you about this God that I serve. He's worthy of 100% of your very existence. And I see the ordination as just a call to come higher. I'm currently in the McCrary School of African American Theology, and Dr. Myers and Dr. Walker and Dr. Little, those phenomenal people, have helped guided me through the transition of coming higher in the spiritual realm and not knowing what to do. You know, to be honest, Jack, I may look as if I have it all together, but in actuality, I do not.
Yeah.
I have a lot of support, a lot of guidance, a lot of people that's rooting for me, praying for me, and it's okay to say, I don't know. One thing that I would say to families who've had children murdered, and, you know, I say it's okay not to be okay. It's okay to say I'm not okay. It's okay to say I don't know. And that part of it all started actually when someone asked me to perform their wedding ceremony. And I was like, I can't do that. And I found out what steps I needed to do to secure a license in the state of Ohio, and I did it, and that's what happened.
In the news conference with police and reporters today, you had a message for families, loved ones of those that are missing, whether they be homicide victims, whether they be missing children or adults.
Right.
What was the message you gave?
The message is to hold on to your hope, number one, and number two, be an active participant in the investigation. Most people spend a lot of time calling the police to find out, what have you found out? What are you doing on the case? But there are other things that can happen. For example, throughout the years, I watch a lot of television of unsolved cases, and it might be detectives that are retired, they're working on cases. And I learned about a program called the VDOC Society in Philadelphia. And so what I did was I talked to DC Tamba at that time. I said, hey, there's some retired forensic scientists, they're retired detectives, and all they do is sit around and look at cases. Can they have Glorias? And they sent the information, and You know, so I was always trying to come up, well, have you considered this? Did you think about that? And they were always open to my suggestions. So to families, I know you're calling the police, but it could be something that you can do within yourself, within your efforts, to keep the case visible, number one, and then to possibly do some of the legwork.
It's a long road that you've been on, a long journey that you've been on. Before we started taping today, you said you sometimes wonder what Gloria would look like. And I do too when I see her as a 14-year-old young woman.
Right.
What was she like? She was taken from our community. We never got to know her.
Right.
What was she like? Was she a feisty 14-year-old or? Yeah,
you know what? She was. I always say to people, she was more the mother figure than I was. I had her. It was a teenage pregnancy, and we were both very young, growing together, and she was just old beyond her age. And she always had these wise things that she would say. And as a single parent in the inner city, I remember we struggled a lot financially. And she would always catch me crying, whether it's over some bills or not having enough. And she would say, one day I'm going to make life better for you, and you're not going to be crying a lot. She had this love for me that I haven't felt since she left. From that perspective,
right.
I can recall one time we were sitting on the front porch of our home, and somebody was passing by and they said some swear words. And she said, don't say that. Don't you see my mother on this porch? You know, I said, girl, sit down. But it was all about, I'm going to protect my mother, you know. And so when she was murdered, I felt as if maybe I had dropped the ball and didn't protect her. So a lot of the fuel, I guess, has been towards redemption. You know, like, okay, I got to do something to help her that in death that I couldn't do in life.
We're also wondering, and you're wondering what she's thinking today, looking down on you. What do you think she's thinking?
She's saying probably, I told you my mother can do it, you know. And then, Jack, this is so interesting, what I learned at the press conference. What triggered the test that they did was an email between myself, my sister, and Rachel Dissel at the Plain Dealer.
Right.
And I thought that was very interesting because my sister is always reading the paper, my sister Sylvia, and she was wondering about all these cases, the rape kits are being tested and cases being solved. And I assured her that that had already happened in Gloria's case. Don't worry about it, they've done that. So I said, but nevertheless, let's ask Rachel. So we sent an email in April, and Rachel responded, I can't believe that it hasn't been done, but I'll check. Next thing you know, there's a hit.
That's fate.
Well, it is
I
fate.
guess. Yeah.
And then it's also a testimony to Rachel being willing to take the step, and for people to get involved to find out how can we get more of these kits tested.
You, at one time in your journey, you worked at the Attorney General's office with Lee Fisher.
He's amazing.
He became a good friend of yours.
Yes.
You also bonded with and became good friends with Margaret Mahalovic, whose daughter Amy was killed. Her killer was never found.
No.
And not Amy, but Margaret has since passed away. That time when you were bonding with another mom that had walked your path, so to speak, that must have been a very special time.
Well, over the years, I've been fortunate to bond with various families, and you know, we've been able to pull strength from each other, because you really can't understand a person unless you've walked in their shoes. So it's important that you bond with people who are familiar, and Margaret Mahalovic was a phenomenal person, and I think she went to her grave grieving over what had happened to her daughter.
You think she, I mean, it sounds trite, you think she died of a broken heart?
Well, it's possible, because one thing I know for certain, and two things I know for sure, and that is homicides, abductions, missing children, that has a ripple effect throughout the family. You might think that you've actually murdered one person, but you've really destroyed various links within families. For example, that person that you kill will never get to go to their prom if they were younger. So now you've deprived the family of seeing them go off. They'll never get married, never go to college, never do any normal things. So yes, they're dead, but the ripple effect from their death permeates throughout the family for quite some time. And the family just tries to find a way to keep functioning, but in actuality, you know, you'll never be the same, not ever.
It changes you forever.
Yes, I think till the day you die. I was saying earlier, this has been half of my life. You know, I mean, just the thought of that's a long time. Not that I'm that old, but I'm just saying it's a long time.
You never thought, though, in 1984, that you would become the person you are today.
No, what I really thought initially was how to keep from losing my mind. That was the only thought. God, because I would lay in bed at night and it felt as if it was going to go through the top of my head. You know, and I would just try to hold my head like I'm going to keep my mind in. And one of the poems in one of the books that I wrote is called Insanity's Eyes. And it talks about my experience with looking into the eyes of insanity. And a lot of times I read it at places I go.
There had to be a great deal of anger at that time,
right.
Initially. How did you get over that?
Well, I think the anger was more towards myself for not recognizing or thinking that you can prevent. What could I have done? What should I have done?
Right.
Maybe I should have, maybe I could have. So you have a lot of self-anger in the grief process. And what you have to do is learn also to forgive yourself. It was nothing that you could have done, nothing. And when I think about Gloria's homicide, I don't think about her death or the way she died. I think about all the good that has happened as a result of her existence.
And that would be, for those watching, the school in Ghana.
Yes, school in Africa.
And in 25 words or less, which I know you cannot do, how did you make a connection to a school that is now being dedicated to Gloria in her memory in Ghana?
Well, a young man found a piece of paper on the ground in Africa about Gloria's homicide. His name was Anthony Tay. I don't know if I'm up to 25 or not, but
you're doing well.
He was hungry and had no food to eat, and he was like literally challenging God. If you are so real, if you're so loving, why won't you at least feed me? And at that time, he picked up a piece of paper off the ground in Africa, and that paper talked about Gloria's rape and murder. So he wrote me a letter to say, I'm sorry to hear about the murder of your girl child. And I'm like, okay, God, what do you want me to do now? I want you to feed him. Well, how can I feed him? You know, I'm barely feeding myself.
Right.
But a series of events led up to a connection. And 10 years later, you know, after feeding and providing food for children there and education for children there, we went back. A decision was made, how can I make a lasting impression on these individuals? And the idea came up to build this school, and so I started that, and next thing you know, the school is being built.
You were there for the groundbreaking.
Yes, absolutely. It was an amazing event. Went with George Frazier, who sponsored the trip during Black History Month, and Dr. Kwa David Whitaker, who is the chief. It's in the village of Antankwa in the Elmina region of Ghana, West Africa.
Gloria brought that about.
There's no way to explain how the paper got on the ground.
Right. It's again, it's fate that is leading you. The other thing that you've become very involved in and you started is an organization called Positive Plus.
Yes.
Could you tell us about that?
Well, Positive Plus began because a dear friend of mine, Janice Abernathy, who worked on the case, she's retired now, who was incredible, my strength, my rock on the days that I wanted to give up. But she was working with a lot of youth in the community and needed help at that time. I said, it's not a problem. I'll help you. And I'll get some of my friends. Simple. Well, everyone I asked was having so many problems, they couldn't help themselves. So we made a conscious decision to come together, help each other with the mindset that once you're helped, you go help someone else. We started meeting in my living room, and next thing you know, we grew from there, and it's 26 years now later. Still helping one another.
And still honoring those in the community
Yes.
that help other people.
Like yourself.
Well,
you were one of our honorees.
I'm one of many, and that was a very nice honor that you bestowed upon me.
We like to say thank you.
Well, that's people don't hear that. So for you to take that journey in your lifetime to say thank you to a community that hopefully supported you, did you find, after Gloria's death, did you find the support there? Did you find people coming up and praying for you
Yes.
and giving you support?
Right. Ever since this news broke, I can't keep up with the phone calls, the emails, the Facebook messages, and a lot of them are from people I can't even remember. One email, one Facebook message was from somebody in Toledo who talked about how they were about to commit suicide, and something I said, and another mother in this city, and another father in that city. All of them have all of these stories. Here's how what you're going through has helped me. So that's encouraging as well. So yes, people are there and supportive.
What lies ahead for Yvonne Pointer now? You're not about to stop. You're sort of in the high speed lane, and you can't get over to slow down. So where are you going now?
Well, I think you just keep riding. You know, it's Gloria's case is solved. Praise the Lord for that. But there's so many other unsolved cases. There's so many missing kids. I think what energy I have left in this life, I'd like to help other families to find resolution in any way I can.
Well, and I don't know, again, if many people do know that you are still with the community relations.
Yes, for the
department?
city of Cleveland.
For the city of Cleveland?
Mayor Frank Jackson has been phenomenal, you know, in all of this process. It's just a great day in our city, but it's a greater day to work for someone as caring and compassionate as the mayor. So my job is in the Community Relations Board. I'm a part of a community response team, and you know, it's just a lot of good things that's happening in our city. I think this is our season, and I'm expecting greater things for us.
Do you not think it's coincidental that the rescue of Amanda and Gina and Michelle takes place a week or two before the man accused of killing Gloria is found? Is that not a coincidence?
Well, if it is a coincidence, it's a good one. You know, I believe that God has his timing. His timing is perfect. We were just on such a high celebrating that miracle, and rightfully so. That's what it was, a miracle. And then to have a back-to-back miracle, it's like, oh my God, you know, the room is spinning with the jubilation.
Over the past 30 years, you've been in contact with those families, I know. And just recently, you met the women, sat down and talked to them?
Well, when I did the 20th March for Gloria's homicide, Georgina's dad was standing right behind me with a photograph poster with Gina in it. And so there has always been a connection between myself and that family, and so I'm thankful for that. As a matter of fact, Georgina's mom and I just did a television interview recently, before all of this came out. And so that's good to know that there was a relationship with those families, and we celebrate their success.
What was your reaction, and if you had words to say to the women, to their families, when this miracle took place, what did you say? What can you say to them?
Well, as a part of the response team for the city of Cleveland, we are often called on site to different traumatic experiences or crisis. And just to be in the room, it was just almost like unbelievable. You want to rub your eyes like, is that Georgina? Is that, you know, you're sitting there, you believe it, but you don't believe it.
Right.
So it was, I mean, a lot of crying. All of us was just like, oh my God. You know, it just opened the door for so much hope. Just so much hope.
And maybe that's a good spot to end our conversation here, is on the hope that you never gave up.
No.
After all these years, and really, it's hard to say what's in your heart for me, and maybe not as hard for you to say it, but what are your wishes for the community, for people that are walking your walk?
Right. My immediate wish is that we come together as one. Mm-hmm. Stop seeing black, stop seeing white, stop seeing east side, west side, and see us all as one. I can remember years ago a reporter named Paul Meineke. You might remember him.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
He was doing an interview with me. This was right after Gloria's homicide. And he kept saying, a black child was reported missing on the city of Cleveland's east side. A black child was reported missing. A black child was found murdered. And I said, wait, stop. Can I stop the interview for a second? And I said to him, do you have children? And he said, yes, 3 girls. I said, well, if your child was murdered, what color would her blood be? And he said, red. I said, so Gloria was not a black child murdered. She was a child murdered. And when I said it, the microphone just went limp and tears rolled down his eyes as reality set in that no one should do this to a child regardless of the color of her skin. So my wish for us is that we don't see in black and white. We see us all as one, the way God sees us, and that we work together as one. We get with the mayor, we get with the police, we get with anyone who's trying to make a difference in this world and say, before I do anything to hinder you, I won't do anything. But I'm here to help, and just roll up our sleeves and get busy doing it.
You're a motivational speaker, among other things that we've already mentioned.
Right.
And is that your message, or one of your messages that you tell people
Yeah,
as a speaker?
absolutely. Yes, absolutely. I'm fortunate to have an opportunity to speak around the country, and it's all about motivating people to action.
You were on Oprah's couch, for crying out loud.
Yeah, I'm hoping Oprah calls me. I have a story, because she's doing this segment called Where Are They Now?
Right.
And I would love for her to know where I am now.
I think she'll hear where
I hope
you
so.
are.
I'm ready to tell her.
Oh, I bet you are. I don't know if she has enough time on her show, on her program.
You never know.
But being Oprah, she would allot enough time.
This is a wonderful, wonderful human interest story, and it's nothing short of a miracle.
It's a good time for Yvonne Pointer and your family.
Yes, my family is deeply, deeply elated.
Well, and you're surrounded with a lot of support and a lot of love in the community.
Yes.
So, and you've passed that back. It's a two-way street.
I think love is a mutual emotion.
Yes.
If you can let it flow between two people, I don't think there's anything greater than that. Just like I love you.
And just like I love you too.
Thank you. See, so we got a love fest going on here.
We have a love fest, but if my wife is watching, I'm in big trouble.
Oh,
Yvonne,
no,
you know that.
not that kind of love fest. Just one of those love fests, like power to the people,
Right, right. It's all about love.
Yeah, it is all about love.
Yvonne, thank you so much.
Oh, Jack, I appreciate it. Thank you.
I wish you the best, and we will talk again.
Let's see what happens.
This will not be our last conversation on TV 20.
No, thanks.
You're welcome. Thank you for joining us at home or on the internet on Neighborhood News on TV 20. I'm Jack Marschall. We will see you again, and we will keep you connected to your neighborhood and your community right here on TV 20.